Finally, Tom, gotta tell you why. As a kid, I hated G.I. Joe action figures. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. Anyone that watched my videos knows I've talked about how I didn't play with G.I. Joe action figures as a kid. I was a Star Wars guy. And then, for about a year and a half, I was a He-Man guy. Then I moved out of toys, at least for a little while. And people often ask me, Junkman, why don't you like G.I. Joe? Well, first, let me get it out of the way that since I've gotten older, I've grown to respect G.I. Joe. But as a kid, I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I didn't want to be nowhere near G.I. Joe. And part of me still, today when I see a 80s G.I. Joe figure, although I respect the line and what it did for the toy industry, I look at it, and other ones like it, and I just go, So let's go back to, or start this with the first G.I. Joe I had. Yeah, I had G.I. Joe. At least two of them that I know. Well, one of them, it was a G.I. Joe on a motorcycle. Now, I got this at a birthday party. I actually went to a birthday party, a guy named Justin. And for some reason, his parent or his mom, somebody, gave presents to everybody. Sure, he had all his presents, but we all got to open our own present also. Only birthday party I ever seen like that. I don't understand. But anybody that went there got something also. And I got this, and it was a G.I. Joe wearing green, and he had a motorcycle. And I don't know I can't remember if I got a G.I. Joe and the motorcycle, or the motorcycle came with G.I. Joe. Some of you guys that know G.I. Joe may know what I'm talking about. I thought it had a sidecar on it, but I could be wrong. Maybe it didn't have a sidecar. But I can remember taking it home and playing with it. Didn't see a problem with it. But not too long, I put it to the side, and I played with my Star Wars figures. Now, I will say I've always was kind of like a one-trick pony type of guy, where if I was into something, that's what I was into. I played Star Wars, that's all I cared about. Sure, I had some other things here and there, but Star Wars was my action figure. If I had the money to buy an action figure, I wasn't buying G.I. Joe. I wasn't buying anything else. I was going to Star Wars, although I had a few other things here and there. So that's one reason right there I didn't start getting G.I. Joe. I want to spend my money on Star Wars. But I can remember, I guess, the moment I didn't like G.I. Joe, where I didn't understand kids that played with G.I. Joe. Now, going farther back in the 70s, my brother had G.I. Joe, but it was the big tall one with the fuzzy beard. And I loved playing. Well, I didn't love playing with it. I liked petting his hair. I used to get that thing and just pet his hair all the time, rub it on my face, rub it on my sack. I'll rub it all over the place. If there was a place on my body I could rub that G.I. Joe hair, I would rub it on there. My brother used to get so mad. Why does it smell like spoiled onions? I was like, I don't know. I don't know where it's been. But let's get back to where he's not playing with toys anymore. We're getting into the 80s, the small G.I. Joe. I'm going to school. At school is one of my good friends, Grady Fitzpatrick. Grady was a good guy. Grew up on a farm. We didn't spend much time together outside the school, but every once in a while, maybe twice a year, we would hang out, do something on the weekend. He would come to my house, or I would go to his farm. I once saw him milk a goat. I did. I couldn't believe it. I didn't know you could even milk a goat. I didn't even know that was a thing. I was not a city boy, but I ain't that country. I ain't milking no goat. But anyway, I can remember this one time he was going to come to my house, and I was excited. I was like, oh, I got some new Empire Strikes Back figure. I got a brand new cloud car vehicle for him to play with. It's going to be great. Maybe he'll bring over an extra cloud car pilot, and I can finally have two of them in there, because I'm not about to waste my money buying two of that damn ugly pilot. But I can remember talking to him at school that weekend. We didn't have cell phones and text or anything, and we would get excited. Oh, what we're going to do? And he said, hey, do you play G.I. Joe? I thought about it, and I said, no, I don't have any G.I. Joe. And I told him about the one I did have that Justin gave me, the motorcycle guy. Told him I wasn't sure where it was, and he was like, well, find that G.I. Joe, man. I'm going to bring, he said he had a whole shoebox full of G.I. Joe. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. It kind of hurt me right here a little bit, because I was excited to play Star Wars. But like, it's going to come over Friday night, stay till Saturday night, so we'll probably have time to play with a little bit. Sure, we'll get G.I. Joe out of the way Friday night. I'll let him play with his G.I. Joe. Then I'll pull out my creature cantina, my aliens, and my Star Wars figures. And he'll leave there wanting more Star Wars figures. Now, he did play with both, but So, we talked about it, and I went home and tried to find my G.I. Joe and his motorcycle. I can remember finding the motorcycle. But I could never find that G.I. Joe. I don't know what happened to it. And throughout all week, he was telling me all about his G.I. Joe. He was naming them all. I think one was named Cobra. I remember that. I remember thinking that was cool. Cobra. Because I had the Rubik snake, and I always try to make a Cobra. I never could. I could make a regular snake. Never could make that Cobra. But I like the name. I like Cobra. That sounds cool. I was like, tell me more. And he's like, there's these bad guys that fight against the government, these army figures. And the more he talked about it, the more it sounded exciting. I was like, okay, bring your G.I. Joe. Let's get into this. And he said he had some kind of aircraft carrier or something he couldn't bring. I'm not really sure what he had, but I know he said he had some stuff he couldn't bring. He was just going to bring the figures. Well, that's okay. I got a bed. We'll make it the mountain or something. It's always fun to play with. The Cheshire George in your room could be, a big tower. You got to get to the top of it because it's when the bad guys is taking over or something. So, a playset's nice, but it's okay. You don't always have to bring all that with you. So I was all excited. G.I. Joe. I was a little worried. I ain't gonna lie to you. I was a little worried also. Well, if he brought this G.I. Joe over to my house and I played with it and I liked it. Well, if I liked it more than Star Wars, what if next time I went to Kmart, I wanted a G.I. Joe figure and not a Star Wars figure? I was worried. I was worried. But I said, no, I play with other toys. I've had other toys. I've had Buck Rogers from the Mego collection. But nothing ever could take away my love for Star Wars. So, came the weekend. Here he comes. I see him get out of that Buick right now with a big old box. Well, I'm too big, like a shoebox. That's why I kept my Star Wars figures into it, only shoebox. So he got the shoebox and he brought it in the house and threw it down. Went outside, rode our bikes, hung out a little bit. I wanted to show him the neighborhood, show him where everybody was, show him what we did on the weekend. Took him in the woods, jumped some hills and stuff on the bike. We just had a good day. So, the street light came on, so we had to go back home. So we went back home. There we are, had supper, probably put some drinks in our tummies and everything. Maybe watched a little Simon and Simon. I don't know exactly what we did, but we ended up in my room, and it was time to play. And I can remember we were going through it. I was showing him some kind of... I had this really good little toy gun that you put a silencer on. I really loved that gun. It was so cool. You put a silencer on. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. So I let him play with that. I showed him my McGruff crime doll, stuffed animal. I don't know. I was too old for that, but I liked it. He had a trench coat. It was always cool, anything with a trench coat. But I was like, well, what you want to play? And I tried to nudge him over to the Star Wars. I was like, hey, you want to see a land speeder? You want to see my cloud car? And he was like, no, I don't like big orange shoes. I'm not a clown. I was like, okay. So he made fun of that. And he said, well, let's play G.I. Joe. I was kind of excited. So I said, okay, let's play G.I. Joe. So, we cleared a little place off the floor and the bed and everything. He got his box, turned it upside down. And I was like, well, who am I going to be? I mean, I know with Star Wars, you got the Empire and you got the good guys. You got the rebels. You got the good guys and the bad guys. Sometimes you have some of the aliens, can mix over, be spies and everything. But I didn't know G.I. Joe. I was like, who's going to be the good G.I. Joe? Who's going to be it? How do I tell them the difference? He started telling me the blue one is the bad guys, the Cobra team. And he started the army one's a green. And I wasn't too thrilled with the whole army aspect of it because it was seeming too much like real life. And I was like, I need some space fantasy. But I was going to humor him and hopefully enjoy this. So he was like, he plays like me and my brothers. Like, you pick a figure, I pick a figure. We didn't care about teams as much, But he said you got to have Cobra. You got to have the main guy. I think the main guy was named Cobra, and you got to have the main Star Wars guy. The main G.I. Joe guy. You got to have them both. So got that, got that, and then we pick. Okay, you have this one and this one. And we got ready to play with them, and that's when I noticed something. Something I didn't like at all. It just didn't seem right. They had joints all over them. They moved all over the place. I was used to Star Wars figures. Look. I was used to Star Wars figures. Up, down. Kick, not kick. Turn the head. That's all I needed. Bend over. I didn't need knee joints and leg joints and all kinds of stuff. And then I noticed the hip had a rubber band in it or something. It moved real freely. It just didn't seem like a toy to me. And then I can remember, I don't remember what figure it was, but it was more than one. It was a few figures I had, and they wouldn't even stand up. They were just like, well, you remember those little toy plastic things you push the side of it, and it would have like Mickey Mouse or Spider-Man or somebody on the screen. You push the buttons and then make them do like this or fall down. Remember that? They would like fall down and stuff. It was like that. So my Star Wars figures, I remember I could stand them up. Look at that, stand up. I could do it with my eyes closed. Stand it up, see? Do it with my eyes closed. But G.I. Joe, no matter how I just stood up, he'd just fall down. Blech. Like he had no life to him at all. And I had this brought back a memory I forgot when I saw that G.I. Joe. I told you earlier that I played with some Mego Buck Rogers figures. Yeah, I didn't have them all. I have Buck Rogers and whoever this guy is. And after playing with them for about a month, they were just like the G.I. Joe. They were all wobbly and everything. And wouldn't stand up. It wasn't fun at all. Sure, I could bend their knees and bend their elbows. Woo, that's exciting. I just really couldn't stand the G.I. Joes. And I tried to play with them. I was like, why don't they stand up? He's like, no, man, look, you can bend them like this and sit them in chairs. You can sit them on this, sit them on that. You can stand them up. You can do all this stuff with them. And I was like, nah. Then he pulled out one G.I. Joe, and I got ready to play, and guess what? The thing was broken half. It was broken half. And they looked like they was wearing underwear. Now, I did play with He-Man later on, and He-Man doesn't look like he's wearing underwear. Everybody in the line does. And these look like you see, let me show you a picture. See, it looks like they're wearing some kind of underwear. I just don't like the look of them. They had rubber bands in them and hooks and everything. It just looked really complicated for a toy. Now I played with him. I played with his G.I. Joe as long as he wanted to, and I can remember in my head just thinking, this is horrible. Who wants to play with this? Look, you can drop a Lando. You can't do that. You drop a G.I. Joe, you might pop a rubber band. Oh, and ever since then, I refuse to buy G.I. Joe. Anytime anybody says, hey, you want to play G.I. Joe? I say, fuck no, I don't want to play that. No, I'm not playing any old damn G.I. Joe with their joints and the twisted arms and everything. And I took this with me throughout the 80s and even in the 90s when I've grown up or in my 20s and started collecting figures. People will say, hey, I got a G.I. Joe collection. You want to take a look? No! No! It just reminded me of playing G.I. Joe with Grady Fitzpatrick. He loved those G.I. Joe. And today, even today, I see those G.I. Joe and there are all the joints and everything. It's just, I've had some of you tell me in the comment section that you quit playing with Star Wars because G.I. Joe had joints in them. Because their elbows bent. They're right here, they did something stupid like this. Their knees bent. Hell, their part ankles might have bent. I never got it. I just need a regular figure. And I just hate. They seem like they break real easy. Maybe he was rough with these. I don't know. Maybe he just broke them. But I've seen them a lot of times with the broke rubber band. I've seen YouTube videos how to replace your rubber band. And I just really, like I said, I've come to respect G.I. Joe. I've come to respect what they've done for the toy industry. So any G.I. Joe fans out there, don't give me hate. But I just have a bad memory of G.I. Joe, you know. So I know a lot of you has asked me before, why don't you like G.I. Joe? And I said I just never got into it. And I thought it was time to do a video why, as a kid, I could not stand G.I. Joe.
Hey, Junkman channel popping though.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.